You booked it. Hooray! But what happens next is where so many actors are lacking in knowledge. In short, if you don't negotiate, you might be leaving a lot on the table. In this video, I'll talk about union and non-union jobs, what's typically in an offer or deal memo, and maybe some of the things you didn't know that you could ask for at that time of the offer. And I'll include a personal anecdote where, on a whim, I got almost $2,000 in perks just by asking. Hey everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. Sorry, she's not here this week. Okay, let's first talk about how the offer or the deal memo actually comes through. If you have an agent, they're, of course, handling all the logistics of this part of the process for you. If you're not repped, well, then all of this rests on your shoulders. But either way, that deal memo should come in the form of an email or otherwise written form. If it starts out as a phone call, make sure you always receive it in written form. And in that deal memo should be some or all of the following information. The rate, duh, you got to know how much you're being paid. Your role. Sometimes they're booking you for a different role than you auditioned for, so it's good to have that in the contract. Your shoot dates, because they may have given you just a window for the whole project initially, but now they have to commit to actual shoot dates for your character. If it's a commercial, you need to know the usage at this point, the where and the when. Where is this going to air on network, cable, streaming, and the when. When is it going to start airing, and how long do they have a right to air it before they have to pay you again? If it's television, then you need to know your billing. Are you co-star or guest star? Is that credit going to be at the top of show? Is it going to be in the end credits? Or does it say APD, which means at producer's discretion, which basically just means they can do whatever they want and they can decide that later. Your accommodations, are they flying you in or paying you reimbursement for travel? Are they housing you, giving you per diem? But also, what sort of dressing room are you going to have? Now, if you do not have representation, and all of that sounds like, a lot. Well, now you're starting to understand the value of having an agent and why they are an essential part of your career. They work with deal memos all the time, so they know what to look for, what to ask for, and how to explain it to you. Without that agent, you have to be knowledgeable in every single one of these terms, and you have to be a good negotiator so that you can stand up for yourself and fight for your value. But let's say you do have an agent. If they are so knowledgeable and, for the sake of argument, you know that they are looking out for your best interests, then why do you have to even worry about all this? Can't you just agree to the deal memo? Even if you don't have a great relationship with your agent or you aren't sure if they have your best interests in mind, it's still just easier to accept that deal memo when it comes to your inbox. Because, it's been slow, right? It's been slow for you. You're desperate to work. Or maybe it's your first booking, or maybe you just really wanted this particular role, or maybe you have gratitude bias. I should be thankful for this booking because all of my friends aren't booking, so I should just be quiet, accept the terms, and move on. Whatever the reason, and it might be a couple of those, actors, generally speaking, aren't shrewd business people. Myself included. We don't want to be that lone holdout that is making it difficult for this production to move forward by saying, you must agree to all my terms, right? I mean, this is an art form, so it feels, icky to involve the legalese of the contract and to mix business and art. You just don't want to deal with that. So again, the path of least resistance to do the thing that you love is to just agree. And the good news is, most of the time, you'll be fine. Especially if you're at the start of your career and you just really haven't earned your right to be asking for perks that are above the minimum or above what is being offered. And also, if you have an agent working on your behalf, you can largely trust them to be looking out for you. And so most of the time, you don't need to ask for anything above and beyond what's in that deal memo. In fact, that agent may have already negotiated terms in your favor, or at least attempted to. Oh, and if it's union work, you definitely have less to worry about because countless union members over decades have worked tirelessly to guarantee us protections and minimums when it comes to wages on each and every job. But after seeing so many deal memos myself over the last couple decades, union and non-union, and becoming more business savvy as a result, I want to share some specific terms that you might think about negotiating with your next contract, whether it's union, non-union, whether you're repped or not repped. The first is rate, and that is the obvious one. You may ask for a pay bump based on several factors. It might be because of your resume. You just deserve, after this body of work that you have amassed, to be paid more than the minimum. But it could be for other less obvious reasons. Let's say you're doing a horror movie and you're playing the bad guy, the monster. You're going to be in special effects makeup for 3 hours every morning that you work. And that is something that no other actor is being asked to do. Stands to reason that there should be some sort of recognition, consideration, compensation for that. Another less obvious reason is if you're doing mild stunt work. Again, let's say it's a horror movie and your character has to run through the woods at night. And it's a low budget production, so they don't have a stunt coordinator and they might not have anybody else that they've hired for safety. Because I don't know about you, I grew up in the 80s, and when we pulled out that slip and slide and put it on the lawn, our parents had to spend like an hour making sure there was no rocks underneath the slip and slide so that we didn't tear up our legs. Is there going to be someone on set who's going to guarantee your safety as you run through the woods? Some actors are savvy and will ask the director to run that path first. So since you maybe aren't going to be able to guarantee what's going to happen that day on set, the least you could do is ask for a pay bump in the contract so that you know that there's some sort of compensation for being asked to do something that no other actor is being asked to do. Now, if it's a no budget project where they're not offering any pay for the actors, which is fine, everyone has to start somewhere, ask for deferred payment. This is important, so don't overlook this. It means they pay you nothing now, but if the movie does get sold and makes money, makes a profit, you will then get whatever is in that deferred payment contract. I did a horror movie over 20 years ago, and they offered to pay $100 per day in deferred payment. I signed that contract thinking, this is never going to happen. They sold it to Lionsgate like a year and some change later, and I got my $100. And so from then on, I realized this is a thing, and it should be a thing on every project, as far as I'm concerned. Now, if they're working under a union contract and are not paying you anything, because some of the lower tier contracts do allow the producer to not pay the actor, then you're going to be protected if that project does get sold. So you can rest assured that you'll be protected on a union project even when you're not getting paid. But on those non-union projects, you got to look out for yourself. Next, I want to talk about billing. Let's say that it is a television show, a full network television show, and the audition says that it's co-star, but you feel strongly for whatever reason, which is not for this video to unpack, you'd think you deserve guest star. You can ask for that. Sometimes you can get that guest star without a pay bump. This happened to me not too long ago on a project where it was co-star, but as my agent asked for a bump to guest star, casting came back and said, no, we don't have it in the budget. But turns out there's a sort of weird loophole from production standpoint that if all the work occurs on one day, they can bump me to guest star without paying me more. And so I took the guest star bump without the guest star pay because guest star looks better on the resume. So it didn't cost production anything. And I was able to get a perk just because my agent was asking on my behalf. Interesting footnote, that production actually miscredited me as co-star in the end credits. So I filed a claim with the union and I ended up getting like $1,300 in penalty payments. So I kind of got my bump after all, just retroactively after the fact. Some actors are interested in having a character name as opposed to a character occupation. Let's say you're auditioning and you book the role of janitor, but somewhere in the project, one of the other characters refers to your name. Maybe it's a school and one of the kids calls you Mr. Jones. And you're thinking, can I be credited as Mr. Jones instead of janitor? It'll look better on my resume. I get it. There's a little piece of you that will feel more seen and known if you have a name. You'll think that that will look better on a resume, so forth. I don't fully disagree with you there, but look at it from production's perspective. If this is a low budget project, it's not that hard to do a search and replace in the script and to change the deal memo. But on a full budget production, you know how many departments there are? And you know how many distributions go out in terms of memos and things that are contractual that have to be right for every department that is on that set? So if we change your name, that is a lot of work to change that for everything, not just the script. It's not just a find and replace. every single department now has to be spooled up on that. And everything from the name tag that is on your wardrobe has to be changed. And so that is not a trivial thing to ask for on a full budget production. So you can ask for it, just don't expect it and don't be offended when they come back and say, sorry, we can't change it. Although, weird footnote to that, I had a situation where I auditioned for a role that was an occupation. I was fine with it just being that, but then casting on their own behalf got me a name, which was interesting that they fought for it even though I wasn't asking for it. The next topic I want to cover is overtime and turnarounds. Overtime is pretty obvious. And on a union set, both of these are covered. So this is really about non-union sets. There may not be a provision in your deal memo for overtime. So you just want clarity on how long are the shoot days? And if we go past that 10 hours or that 12 hours, what am I going to get paid for overtime? Now, a turnaround is also important, maybe even more important, because let's say that you wrap on this horror movie that I was making up earlier. You wrap at 4 a.m. on a particular day, and you're working the next day, which is really the same day, and their call time is 8 a.m. So you have 4 hours from wrap to call. That's not a lot of time to sleep. And then let's just say they kind of do that to you several days in a row where you physically don't have time to sleep. That's dangerous. So you want to know ahead of time, what is their policy for turnarounds on this non-union shoot? On a union shoot, if they tried to do that, wrap you at 4 and call you 4 hours later at 8 a.m., ooh, they got to pay out the nose for that. That's called a forced call on a union set. But in the non-union world, the Wild West, you have to look out for yourself. You at least need to know what their policy is. Even if you're willing to get minimal sleep, it should be in writing. Okay, going back to commercials. If it's union, the terms, everything will be stated. You can still negotiate that, but it's going to be so obvious and it'll be in that deal memo. For non-union, this is always going to work in their favor. And so oftentimes your agent or you, if you don't have a rep, are going to have to negotiate better terms because they will want a forever buyout. They want to pay you once and then be able to use your image forever in as many media as they want. They want to be able to put you on TV and streaming and anywhere else that might be created when it comes to advertising in the future. So you need to fight for yourself to limit that, to at least put some guardrails on what they can use it for and for how long they can use it. So if it's a forever buyout, get them to at least agree to 1 year. Okay, they won't agree to that. If you're willing to go to 2 years, fine. Certainly don't go beyond like 5 years. That's just way too long for them to have a right to your image in that space. And by space, I mean if it was an insurance commercial, if it was a car commercial, if it was a fast food commercial. Now, let's say that you get to set and you're looking for your dressing room. On your union set, you're guaranteed a honey wagon, which is the little 4x8 jail cell, for lack of a better description. On a non-union set, again, Wild West. If you're a female presenting actor on, again, that horror film where it's going to be a largely male cast, you might want to ask, well, when we're shooting out in that forest or in these other exterior locations, am I going to have a dressing room? Am I going to have a private space? Not necessarily to even change clothes, but just to have privacy. And if not, that's the time to bake that into the contract so that you know what to expect when you arrive way out in the middle of nowhere. Now, for union sets where you're guaranteed a honey wagon, a small dressing room, there will be times where you'll want to fight for something more than just that honey wagon. You might want a triple banger, as it's called, or a double banger. And believe me, this is not a huge ask all the time. On a lot of sets, they have to accommodate some of the bigger actors on set. And so the trailer they rent might be a triple banger where there's 3 dressing rooms, but they may only have most days 2 actors that are in those bigger dressing rooms. So there might be just an empty dressing room that's bigger than a honey wagon. And so depending on the shoot day and how things line up, it is worth asking for because a lot of times they can bump you. I was on Fate of the Furious, which was Fast 8, and I was on it for several weeks with a honey wagon that smelled like sewage, like most honey wagons do. And a couple days, though, they had a double banger, I think it was, so an even bigger dressing room that just wasn't being occupied. And so the Basecamp PA did me a solid and let me hang out in that bigger dressing room on the days that it was empty, which was a really cool thing for him to do. I say that so that you understand that oftentimes there's just an extra dressing room that is sitting there empty. And if you had asked for it ahead of time in your contract, they might have been able to guarantee it for you. Or you might actually be able to be upgraded on the day if if it works out. Now, let's say that once you get this deal memo, they've finally given you shoot dates that they hadn't given you before. You knew the shoot window, but now that you have the shoot dates, you're thinking, oh no, I have that commitment on that day. Oh gosh, am I gonna have to just give up that commitment or give up this job? Please ask. Ask if they can move things around. I once had the pleasure of booking 2 films that overlapped with each other. And for me to do both of them, I was going to have to go to Charlotte for a day of shooting, drive all the way back that night to do a shoot on the next day here in Atlanta, only to drive right back to Charlotte for the next day of shooting on that project. Well, the project in Charlotte did me a solid. They reorganized the entire shoot of those scenes so that everything happened in one day, and I could only go up to Charlotte once, come back, and then do the other shoot. They were willing to work around my schedule. In that case, it was another booking. But it never hurts to ask, because oftentimes if they're doing a lot of shooting in one location, then they have flexibility in terms of who they're going to call in each day or what scenes or which shots they're going to do each day. And even though you might be number 75 on the call sheet, they may have the easy ability to switch things around to accommodate you. Now, this next one, I never would have thought of, except for the fact that my agent Misty 20 plus years ago built this into a contract for me. I booked this indie film, and the producer was a lawyer, so the contract that he sent over was like 7-8 pages long. It was ridiculous. And even though I was not going through my agent, I asked Misty at Houghton to take a look at the contract. She was able to negotiate a commission for herself so that she would get paid for this work that she was doing. But she also negotiated that I got to keep my wardrobe, which was such a cool thing, even though none of that wardrobe really fit my style in real life. So it was largely useless. It was still a fun perk to be able to keep my wardrobe. So if you're doing a non-union film, especially lower budget, they're still going to have to buy some wardrobe for you. Ask if you can keep it and put that in the contract. For union stuff or just bigger budget stuff, don't expect them to say yes to this provision. If it's a film, they know that they might have to do reshoots, so they might want to hold on to all of your wardrobe. So then, once production has actually wrapped, they might be willing to do it on the back end, but they probably won't put that into the contract. And for television, they never know if you're going to come back. Even if your character dies, who knows? They might be doing flashbacks later in the season or next season. So it's very rare that in television they would be willing to give the wardrobe to you. Okay, now time for the anecdote that I teased at the beginning of this video, and it's a fun final perk that you might decide to try to negotiate for your own contract. For background, I joined the union at the Georgia rate, the Georgia local rate. SAG-AFTRA has different locals around the country, and so if you join in one of those locals, you'll only have to pay the local initiation fee. So for me, I think it was somewhere around like $1,400 or $1,500. The national rate was over $3,000. So it meant that I was saving like $1,800 by joining here in Georgia. However, I had a job in LA last year and it was only one day of shooting, but because I was working in LA, I now owed that difference. And I didn't think about this because I was doing reshoots. It was one day of reshoots on a film. So we shot the film in Atlanta and I had to do one day of reshoots in LA. And after getting back to Atlanta, I realized, oh crap, I owe $1,800 to the union. And then sure enough, I got my notice that, hey, you owe $1,800. And so I just thought to myself, I wonder if they would pay it. So I asked my agent. They're like, huh, doesn't hurt to ask. They asked casting. Casting's like, huh, doesn't hurt to ask. They asked production. Came back very quickly. Sure, we'll pay it. Okay, just like that? Huh. Now, this was a big studio and it was a big movie and it was a big budget. So it was couch change for them. I mean, they had just spent thousands on first class plane tickets and hotel for me to be out there for a few days for what amounted to about an hour on set. So I understand their willingness to just be like, oh yeah, sure. He did us a solid by agreeing to fly out here. We'll do him a solid by paying for the rest of this initiation fee. So when it comes to that SAG-AFTRA initiation fee, don't expect it to happen because like I said, for almost 20 years, it was this myth that lived in my head. I didn't even know if it was true. And it's probably only going to happen if it's a very big budget production, but it doesn't hurt to ask. If the job is forcing you to join the union or forcing you to pay that difference in initiation fee, ask. What's the worst that can happen? They say no. So the theme here is so abundantly clear. Ask. This is a negotiation. Yes, casting, who is negotiating on behalf of the producers, is hoping that you'll just say yes without batting an eyelash at the deal memo. But at the same time, they know it's your right to negotiate. Now, there is a way to approach negotiations that's tactful and respectful, but more often than not, actors diminish their value at the time of the offer because they're just so thankful that they're working. Hopefully the examples I gave have opened your eyes to this stage in the process of booking a job. Whether or not you have representation, you need to learn your value, to fight for that value. Know when you're willing to give in on a term, and ultimately, when it's appropriate, to just walk away. And that is the hardest thing to do as an actor, because you finally got permission to act. And so to squander that by saying no just feels, it just doesn't compute. Oh, this business is tough. So tough. So incredibly tough. Believe me, I know. If you have other contract terms you've negotiated, or if there's a nuance that I've missed in this discussion, please drop a comment below. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.